Greetings, I'm your host, Dr. Wolfula, with a return to Haddonfield as I give my updated rankings of the Halloween franchise's 13 films to date. I made a ranking video of Halloween movies nearly a decade ago when there were still only 10 Halloween films, and in the wake of David Gordon Green's controversial Halloween trilogy recently coming to a close, I've gotten a lot of fans asking me to make a new ranking video, so here it is. Now, the Halloween series is my favorite horror franchise. There are horror franchises with better consistency and quality control, admittedly, like Evil Dead, but there's just something about Michael Myers, the silent masked killer at the center of the series, mixed with the titular Halloween setting itself, that keeps me coming back to John Carpenter's and Deborah Hill's inadvertent horror saga. Number 1 in my Halloween rankings isn't gonna fucking shock anybody, but I think how I rank the sequels now might surprise some folks, and even maybe piss some of you off. But here's how I see the Halloween sequels. I have a lot of fun watching most Halloween sequels, but all of them are inherently flawed. The only thing that's flawless in a Halloween sequel is Tom Atkins' ass. That thing is like two ripe pumpkins side by side. None of the Halloween sequels themselves come close to reaching the original film's subtle genius. So which of the Halloween sequels work for me ultimately comes down to personal preferences. How much fun a sequel is to rewatch for me, and how willing I am to overlook a sequel's flaws to appreciate what it brings to the table. One person's treat is another person's trick after all. So this video is based purely on my own subjective view of the Halloween series. I never try to pass these ranking videos off as anything other than an opinion, so don't get mad if you disagree with my rankings of Halloween sequels of all things. Just share your rankings in the comments. Now on to my rankings of the Halloween series.
You know, it's Halloween. I guess everyone's entitled to one good scare, huh?
Number 13, Halloween Resurrection. The 8th Halloween movie just fucking sucks. For one thing, Tyra Banks is on the poster, but she doesn't appear anywhere in this film. Wait, Tyra Banks is in this movie?! The only enjoyment I get out of Resurrection is the enthusiastic performance of its very unlikely leading man, Busta Rhymes, and when we're talking about a Halloween movie, describing Busta Rhymes as the only highlight is damning praise.
I ain't telling you to be Michael Myers, I'm playing Michael Myers.
Resurrection is just gimmicky with its fusion of found footage to execute its Myers House online reality show premise. In the age of Twitch and TikTok, Resurrection feels ahead of its time, but it doesn't feel like it's really trying to say anything with its premise. Just chasing after trends to make the Halloween series relevant to mainstream audiences in a world post-Scream 3 and before the imminent wave of horror remakes.
You are like this close to getting voted off the island.
How Resurrection brings back Michael after his cathartic death in H2O feels like cheating. Like none of this matters because the writers can just pull whatever they want out of their asses to make more movies. Yeah, Michael just switched places with a random paramedic who never thought to take the mask off, I guess.
She killed the wrong person.
Bullshit!
I'll see you in hell.
Laurie Strode is unceremoniously killed off early in the flick because Jamie Lee Curtis refused to commit to this movie, but was contractually obligated to do it anyway. So as a compromise, we get a very anticlimactic final showdown between Michael and Laurie, but Resurrection doesn't know what to do with Michael beyond this point. Michael feels out of place in his own movie, relegated to the role of a Scooby-Doo villain scaring kids off his property by murdering them.
Somebody out there, please help us. She really is a very talented actress.
It just feels lame, and honestly, it doesn't make for a very entertaining slasher film.
Trick or treat, motherfucker.
Number 12, Halloween 2, 2009. Rob Zombie's second Halloween film is admittedly the entry I've rewatched the least, and the first time I tried to watch it, I couldn't even finish it, but I must admit, I do at least appreciate the artistic merit behind 2009's Halloween 2.
Like, cow! Cow!
Rob Zombie was pressured to make a sequel to his Halloween remake by the notorious Weinsteins, and Zombie made the most of it by making his Halloween 2 really weird and experimental, delivering more of a Lynchian vision of Michael Myers that serves as a very abstract exploration of trauma and grief, complete with creepy dream sequences. Experimental movies aren't gonna work for everyone though, and Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 just isn't for me. The white horse element, where Michael and his sister Laurie perceive their dead Sherry Moon zombie mother dressed in all white and joined by a white horse, is just baffling to me. Like Michael is told to kill by an imaginary version of his mom? And Michael had this imaginary friend version of his mom when his real mom was still alive? What?
You were walking down this white hallway with this big white horse.
I also just can't get into Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 because it's just too trashy, which is his style, but all of the characters just aren't pleasant to spend time with. Laurie is completely given up at the start of the film, and she just goes further downhill.
I'm not strong enough and I'm tired of pretending that I am!
And Malcolm McDowell's Dr. Loomis is just a caricature at this point who's greedily capitalizing on tragedies in the most evil and pathetic ways imaginable.
I've endured quite a lot of misery of my own.
Yeah, well, everyone feels real bad for you.
With Michael Myers just lost in the shuffle, carrying out his revenge occasionally in brutal ways, but the kills just feel mindless. It all just makes Rob Zombie's Halloween 2 hard for me to watch, and not for the horror elements. It's just more bleak and cynical than it is scary.
Are we talking about the Austin Powers Mike Myers, or is this...
It's over.
Number 11, Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. The fifth Halloween film is a functional late 80s slasher movie, but it feels at best like a weak entry in the Friday the 13th series. Michael looks like shit, and his kills in the fifth film don't make up for the overall mediocrity of the rest of the movie. Halloween 5's ultimate sin is retconning the end of Halloween 4. Michael being alive is fine, but Jamie not only no longer being a killer, but becoming mute for most of the film makes for an unsatisfying plot development that ends up going nowhere. To add insult to injury, Jamie's foster sister Rachel is unceremoniously killed early on in the film, and Rachel is replaced by her never-before-seen best friend Tina, who's super obnoxious and suddenly has a very close relationship with Jamie.
Be sensible.
I'm never sensible if I can help it!
Becoming the main character for a bit just to have Tina end up dead anyway. Why couldn't Rachel have filled Tina's role in 5? It just feels pointless. The makers of Halloween 5 just had no idea what they were doing with it, adding the thorn symbol to Michael's wrist and a man in black who randomly appears and acts as a deus ex machina, saving Michael at the end. Donald Pleasance as Dr. Loomis is usually a highlight, but he's forced to play Loomis as even darker and crueler, and it's just difficult to believe that this guy would be allowed around a little girl he once pulled a gun on.
Right!
That he would be trusted counseling children at all after Michael is a miracle.
Was a coffin of a 9-year-old girl.
What do you think he's going to do with that?
Donald Pleasance just seems miserable in Halloween 5. They barely give him anything to do, and what they have Loomis do feels almost as bad as what Michael does.
You want her! Here she is!
Halloween 5 is just where the series really started to lose its way, and it's struggled to stay on course ever since. Number 10, Halloween 2007. The appeal of Rob Zombie's Halloween remake ultimately comes down to how much of a fan of Rob Zombie's sensibilities as a director and writer you are.
Bitch, I will crawl over there and I will skull fuck the shit out of you!
I'll get the crutches for you!
The guy's an auteur with a very specific style, and it's just not going to be everybody's cup of tea. When Rob Zombie's remake of Halloween was announced, though, I was actually hyped for it, and I did overall like it when I first saw it in theaters, but over time, and subsequent rewatches, I just found that it didn't really work for me. There's this feeling of resentment to Rob Zombie's Halloween remake. There just isn't a strong sense of enthusiasm from him towards remaking Halloween. It feels like Rob Zombie is going through the motions here. It's like the movie equivalent of a guy working his fast food job. It's not something he likes to do, but he has to do it.
Doc, I may have been born, but I wasn't born yesterday.
I'm sorry, Sheriff.
There just isn't a very strong take to Rob Zombie's Halloween. It's forced to follow the original film story very closely. The only difference being more kills, more colorful language,
Fucking horrible!
and a longer, more sympathetic origin sequence where we questionably spend a lot of time with Michael Myers as a kid.
I'm not listening!
And it just sort of sucks out the mystery of who Michael is, and tries to make up for that by making Michael huge as an adult, with the second half of the film serving as an abridged version of the original movie, nearly scene for scene, with a gritty aesthetic and the sister connection from the sequels integrated into the story.
He's come back for his baby sister.
I will hand it to the remake for having Laurie save herself in the final act instead of relying on Dr. Loomis, who's kind of pointless and wasted in the remake anyway.
It's my fault. I failed you.
It feels like a lot of things are the way they are in the remake just because that's how they were in the original, even when it doesn't feel like it fits in well with the story Rob Zombie is trying to tell here. Why is this version of Dr. Loomis taking it upon himself to go out of his way to face his patient? Because that's how it went in the original movie, but the fidelity to the source material is weird when the movie also has a scene where Rob Zombie's wife is stripping. Why did we need to see this? Well, it's something different at least. Rob Zombie wasn't in an enviable position. He was boxed in, and admittedly, he was at least a better option to remake Halloween than some of the more likelier candidates. It's not a soulless remake like, say, Nightmare on Elm Street. Zombie made the best movie he could within the parameters, and it definitely feels like a Rob Zombie movie. But ultimately, the Rob Zombie remake just doesn't quite work for me, obviously. Number 9, Halloween: The Curse of Michael Myers. I can go either way on these 6th Halloween films, 2 official cuts, the theatrical version and the producer's cut. I don't really have much of a preference, you still end up with a weird movie filled with questionable choices either way. I will say this though, I don't get bored watching Halloween 6, it's definitely a guilty pleasure movie. The writer of the film, Daniel Franz, is a hardcore Halloween fan, and he didn't want to retcon stuff from Halloween 5, and actually took up the challenge of figuring out what the Thorn tattoo was, and who the Man in Black was.
Win.
They could have just copped out, enough time had passed, and they could have just ignored those things, but they tried to answer those questions, and the answers just ended up being more baffling than the questions themselves. Michael is cursed by a thorn cult, and Michael's niece Jamie somehow gives birth to Michael's son. A highlight of Curse of Michael Myers, though, is the very enthusiastically campy performance of Paul Rudd as Tommy Doyle.
I was only 8 years old when I saw him, but I was one of the lucky ones.
He's essentially a young Dr. Loomis, and the performance might be strange and a departure from the more charismatic characters Rudd is known for later, but it's the only way to really deliver Tommy's melodramatic dialogue.
For years I've been convinced there must be some reason, some method behind Michael's madness.
The script of Halloween 6 is obviously weird, and it ultimately feels like the director and producers didn't really know how to handle this material. They didn't bring back Danielle Harris as Jamie. There just wasn't enough enthusiasm behind Halloween 6 beyond the screenwriter. Halloween 6 is ultimately let down by most of the people working on it not really giving a shit. Number 8, Halloween Ends. The 13th and for now final Halloween movie is a lot of people's most hated, but the only major issues I have with it are it being a final film. A farewell to James Jude Courtney's Michael, and the final act just feeling rushed along to try to facilitate it being a final film. It feels like with Ends, there was more that could have been done with this vision of the Halloween universe. More stories you could tell, but Blumhouse only had the rights to make 3 films, and David Gordon Green was moving on to his ill-fated Exorcist movie, so Green just decided to tell this weird personal story with his final Halloween film and tack a finale onto it, and I appreciate that they did something different with Halloween Ends, but still tried to fit it into the Michael Myers mythos. What if somebody else was influenced by Michael to become a killer, and this Halloween film had more of an early 80s slasher film vibe where the killers are always losers who strike back against the world? And what if you mix in a mumblecore romance too, that's also an homage to John Carpenter's career?
You just act like a goddamn asshole because your father treats you like one. It's contagious, right?
Calling this movie Halloween Ends is the same as calling Halloween 3, well, Halloween 3. It was always going to get some mixed, mostly negative responses, but I liked Ends. I just wish it wasn't the actual end, because having Michael Myers benched for most of the movie, only to get taken out really quickly, does a disservice to the character, and also the story they were telling with Corey Cunningham. I wish this could have been split up into 2 films, no longer making it a trilogy, where Michael gets his mask back from Corey, fully recovered, and we get to spend a whole other Halloween night with Michael and Laurie, but I'm glad they ultimately told Corey's story, because otherwise Halloween Ends could have easily just been a retread of what we saw in Halloween 2018. I like Halloween Ends for what it is, but it's very flawed and still makes a lot of people angry.
Nietzsche also said, without music, life would be a mistake.
We're halfway through this video, but before I move on to the rest of my rankings, I just want to give a shout out to this video's sponsor, me! Pledge to my Patreon today to support the channel, help it continue to grow, and you'll also get access to weekly movie nights every Sunday and archive commentaries if you miss the movie nights live. Just $5 a month to get a movie night every week. Pledge to patreon.com/Dr. Wolfula if you're interested, and I thank you in advance. Number 7, Halloween H2O 20 years later. How ironic that the middle entry in the Halloween series finds its way into the middle of my list.
Michael Myers. Yeah, right.
H2O used to be one of my favorites, but the more I watch it, the more problems I find I have with it. H2O was supposed to be a restart of the Halloween series in the wake of Scream's success, but Jamie Lee Curtis wanted it to be the end of the franchise if she'd be involved with it, so they had to come to a compromise where Michael dies, and it just ends up destroying any momentum the series could have had at this point. H2O is just more of a Laurie Strode movie than a Michael Myers movie, mostly her trying to unpack her trauma and her son trying to get her over it.
Michael Myers is dead.
This could have worked better if Michael was more of a presence in this movie, but a lot of H2O is just Michael getting to Laurie, and we don't get to spend a lot of time with Michael stalking or killing characters. They also couldn't settle on a mask for Michael, so he looks consistently goofy throughout the film, and it just ends up feeling like everything about Michael in this movie was an afterthought. There are some nice emotional moments in H2O though, some cool kills, and the final act is really exciting and cathartic. The movie looks great, and there are some nice homages to the original Halloween and Halloween 2. I just wish the rest of H2O was a little more exciting and engaging when I rewatch it.
Self-help, group therapy, shrinks.
Most of the movie just feels like a bummer, just trying to get to the stuff I really like. Number 6, Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. For some, the most different Halloween film is the best sequel or even the best entry period. But for me, Season of the Witch is just a fun, experimental foray into trying to turn a slasher series into an anthology horror series with the weirdest premise imaginable. What holds Halloween 3 together is Tom Atkins' charismatically sleazy portrayal of Dr. Dan Chalice. With any other actor, the movie would fall apart with its strange premise of a Halloween mask company manufacturing masks that turn people's heads into bugs and snakes, which also involves human-like androids and a witchcraft conspiracy brought to fruition by a stolen Stonehenge.
We had a time getting it here.
The movie shouldn't work, but it all comes together to make for a very engaging, weird mystery that makes it a huge departure from any other movie about the holiday of Halloween, let alone the Halloween movies featuring Michael Myers. Season of the Witch might not have Michael Myers in it, but it might be the best movie about the holiday itself in the whole series. It calls back to the holiday's dark beginnings and blends it all together through technology with the modern iteration of the holiday.
You don't really know much about Halloween.
Halloween 3 just has a very unique vibe to it, and Dean Cundey's cinematography makes what could have been a very low-rent movie look beautiful. Despite a lack of a direct appearance from Michael Myers, Halloween 3 can hold its own among all the sequels. I'm just admittedly a big Michael Myers fan, so I'll end up preferring the Halloween movies that have the shape in them killing people, but I still really love Halloween 3 and always make sure to watch it every year. Halloween 3 is the movie everybody used to hate, but everybody learned to love. It bearing the Halloween 3 title was both a curse and a blessing, drawing negative comparisons to the first two films, but also making Halloween 3 stay relevant. If it wasn't Halloween 3, it might have faded into obscurity. Number 5, Halloween 2. The first Halloween sequel is the favorite of most, and I do really like it. It's just, over time though, I realize the main appeal in Halloween 2 for me is that it feels the most like the original, taking place on the same night. It has some cool kills, and the best pair of breasts the Halloween series has ever seen. Hello, nurse.
It's too hot in here now, bud.
John Carpenter didn't want to make Halloween 2, and it just feels like he's phoning in the script, making it like a lot of slasher movies coming out around that time as a parlay to make the movies he actually wanted to work on. Halloween 2 takes place on the same night, but it loses all momentum putting Laurie in a hospital bed, and just having Dr. Loomis off to the side, just sort of wasting time until he's told previously withheld information about Laurie being Michael's sister.
That Strode girl, that's Michael Myers' sister.
Which feels like a twist added in just to have some significant plot development take place in 2, but it's not really necessary to give Michael this motivation because he seems to just be into killing people in general. If he was into killing relatives specifically, wouldn't he put killing Laurie as his priority? The characters who get killed in the hospital feel like kills for the sake of kills. You could cut most of them out and jump straight to Michael chasing Laurie and not lose much of anything. The kills in Halloween 2 are cool, I just wish the characters had more relevance to the core character Laurie like the kills in the original movie. The characters in Halloween 2 are just a lot more peripheral. We barely get to know them. The original film just had a lot more discipline with the deaths. We don't see that mechanic die because he has no relevance to Laurie, and he wouldn't have time to be much of a character. It'd just be a kill for the sake of having a kill, and that's just the running theme of Halloween 2. Things happen because they have to in this kind of film, not for very well thought out reasons. But the movie looks and sounds good, has some cool kills, and has a lot of fun stuff going for it to make sitting through some of the slower scenes worth it. It just doesn't have the same level of character that the original movie had. Also, they fucking killed Ben Tramer as soon as they introduced him. Bullshit! Number 4, Halloween 2018. The 11th Halloween film is probably the most solid and well-rounded out of all the sequels. It goes back to what makes the original movie work to the point where it ignores every movie but the original, and uses the same title as the original and even premise of Michael just escaping from captivity and returning to Haddonfield only 40 years later instead of 15. And even though none of the other movies happen to this version of Michael, it's like he never left, and even though he's 61, Michael's age is never a factor in this film. James Jude Courtney's Michael just looks scary and cool in the role. 2018 is a retread in a lot of ways, going back to the well with Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode like an H2O, but turning her into more of a paranoid Dr. Loomis character makes Laurie a lot more compelling to watch and leads to a cool final showdown between the two icons.
Happy Halloween, Michael.
Halloween 2018 is not really a fresh movie, but how it's all executed from the kills to the visuals to the music makes it feel fresh and rejuvenates the series' formula. The downsides to Halloween 2018 are goofy choices like making the investigators in the opening scenes just true crime podcasters, which will date this film in an attempt to comment on recent trends. And having Michael's new psychiatrist be evil is a decent twist, but it doesn't go anywhere interesting. It's just an excuse to get Michael and Laurie back together, and having Michael get broken out of captivity takes away from the shape a bit. Overall though, Halloween 2018 is a good time, and successfully brought Michael in the 21st century and really raised the Shape's profile with mainstream audiences. Number 3, Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. The biggest flaw of the 4th Halloween film is that Michael Myers' mask looks like shit, and it's difficult for some people to get past that. It's admittedly hard to take Michael Myers seriously most of the time he's on screen, but besides that, Halloween 4 is a class act as far as slasher sequels go. Especially given that it came out towards the back end of the slasher movie trend. Halloween 4 takes the original movie's premise, Michael escapes and is on the loose in Haddonfield, and takes it to a whole other level. Michael systematically murks the town of Haddonfield, putting Haddonfield into total disarray as he takes out their outside communication, their power, and wipes out most of their cops.
How can a man do this, Loomis? Tell me.
And you get even more vulnerable prey, replacing Jamie Lee Curtis with Laurie's daughter, Jamie Lloyd. Just an innocent girl struggling to adjust to her foster family and her inborn connection to a deranged serial killer she never knew, and is suddenly forced to face said killer a decade after his last killing spree. Donald Pleasance is great as Loomis this time around, with a much more single-minded determination and intensity than ever before.
Michael!
Halloween 4 has some goofy moments and doesn't have a lot of great kills, but overall, Return of Michael Myers stays true to what made the original movie work while trying to add new elements and pushing things further than what was seen in the original movie, culminating in what I think is the best ending in the series, Michael's niece becoming a killer, starting the cycle all over again. Number 2, Halloween Kills. The 12th Halloween movie isn't very well liked, but for me, it's the ultimate sequel in the sense that it represents everything good and bad about Halloween sequels all at the same time as a crazy, chaotic, supercharged Uber Halloween sequel. Halloween Kills feels like every Halloween sequel at once, and that comes with a lot of drawbacks, but for me personally, I just always have a good time watching Kills. It's a very entertaining slasher movie that feels like a full departure from what the original movie was. A subdued, atmospheric thriller. Kills isn't about subtlety. It's a noisy, dumb kill fest that's just focused on having a good time. All the characters in Kills are really dumb and crazy, but I like that about the movie. It really leans into it. I like that Michael Myers being on the loose causes everybody to go nuts chanting, "Evil dies tonight!" and trying to fuck up anybody who shared a cell with the shape. It makes Michael feel like this larger-than-life figure, more than just a guy with a knife. Just swinging into town can cause a wave of senseless madness and destruction in Michael's wake. It's just really cool to me. It's like everybody in Haddonfield becomes a dumber Dr. Loomis. And he's in this movie too, and it's not great, but they went for it. Did a practical recreation of Dr. Loomis while every other dead celebrity is being brought to life with CGI. I love the flashback sequences to the night of '78. It's very inessential to the film, but really gives the movie room to breathe and reflect on the ambiguity of who Michael is as a person, and if it even really matters who he is.
Who knows what makes him kill, what motivates him?
So many of the sequels make the mistake of defining what drives Michael to kill. But Halloween Kills ultimately concludes that that doesn't matter. The mistake made with Michael is trying to find something sympathetic inside him that's worth keeping alive.
There's nothing inside that man but pure evil.
After the townspeople fuck Michael up, they treat him like a dying dog that needs to be put out of its misery, with Michael waiting for just the right moment to take them all off guard. Halloween Kills is a dumb, violent movie, but it also manages to be really beautiful and introspective at the same time.
Just because your intentions are good doesn't mean things always work out.
It doesn't try to make sense out of the senseless.
It is the essence of evil. The anger that divides us.
It comes to the conclusion that there are evils in this world that just can't be understood, and that those evils shouldn't be underestimated or ignored. You let your guard down and Michael wins.
People are afraid. That is the true curse of Michael.
Number 1, John Carpenter's Halloween. This goes as no surprise. I'm not going to throw you any more curveballs here. The original Halloween is safely my favorite of the series. What makes the original film work is its simplicity. It's just about a killer who stalks babysitters on Halloween. We see the main characters living their normal lives during the holiday, but unbeknownst to them, a killer is lurking in the shadows. The idea that somebody is just hiding in your house watching you by itself is terrifying. Few horror movies even attempt to do what the original Halloween did, but the impact of the film is lessened on subsequent rewatches when you know everything that happens. But what makes Halloween work is the anticipation built up to Michael finally killing a character. Michael's presence is always established, and he can pop out at any time. Halloween tells you something is going to happen. You just don't know when, unless you've seen the movie already. The original Halloween is all about suspense, not about blood like the sequels, and Donald Pleasance as Dr. Loomis builds Michael up as evil on a mythic scale.
The blackest eyes, the devil's eyes.
Without Loomis's classic monologue, Michael would just be some guy in a mask, but Pleasance's performance by itself sells Michael as a much larger threat than he really probably is.
What was living behind that boy's eyes was purely and simply evil.
The original Halloween is a beautifully shot and scored movie version of a Halloween haunted house attraction, with carefully constructed scares, doing so much with so little. A film that brings the boogeyman to life as a flesh and blood figure, somebody who could exist in the real world, hiding in your house right now.
What's the boogeyman?
As a matter of fact, it was.
So there you have it, my new rankings of the Halloween series. It's all very subjective, so don't take it too seriously, and feel free to share your own rankings of the Halloween movies down in the comments below. Oh, and let me know if you want more Michael Myers videos too. I know I've reviewed all the fucking movies twice, but I've been thinking about reviewing more obscure Michael Myers stuff like the Halloween comics. So if you'd be interested in stuff like that, let me know. This video is made possible through the pledges of my Patreon supporters, and I'd like to give a very special thanks to the kind folks pledged to my shoutouts tier. All of the support on Patreon means a lot to me, and it helps my dark influence continue to grow. If you like this video, like it, and if you loved it, click the subscribe and bell buttons for more vids. Be sure to also keep in touch by following me on social media at Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Dr. Wolfula. While I still have your attention, consider pledging to my Patreon to support the channel and get bonus content like previews, VIP Discord server access, private movie night streams, and credits in videos. Consider pledging at patreon.com/Dr. Wolfula. Also, check out official Dr. Wolfula t-shirts and other merch on tpublic.com/user/Dr. Wolfula. Thanks for watching. See you all next time. Dr. Wolfula signing out.